Woo! Just coming off playing a little Samus Returns. Oh, God. What a game. Oh, you just... It's a total reason to own a 3DS or, new Nintendo 3DS or new Nintendo 2DS XL. Oh, man. It finally clicked for me. I was wondering about this. By the way, of course, welcome to another Patreon-only Sovereign Tech Wednesday Q&A. Just for you patrons, I love you. Thank you so much for being a patron. Got a lot of new ones this week. Honored to have you on board. We're going to get into some tech, some other interesting stuff, and we'll have some fun at the end. But it finally clicked. A lot of people were saying, why in North America did they stop making the new Nintendo 3DS? They're still making the new Nintendo 3DS XL, but they stopped making the new Nintendo 3DS about a year ago. And I think I don't think it's because it didn't sell well. Oh, wow. Could you hear that? For some reason, my mic arm is making a lot of noise now. Anyway, the reason is because they knew they had the 2DS XL coming out, which, fits the bill of being smaller, of having that smaller, size. I guess I'll say size, that smaller footprint. That's what I was looking for. Kind of has a smaller footprint in your hand, like the new Nintendo 3DS did, not the 3DS XL, but it has the same screen size as the 3DS XL. So I think really that's what they were doing, is they just didn't want so many models out there. Amazingly though, they're still selling packages with the original 2DS. Why? I guess nobody bought it, and so they're just, I don't know, they're just tossing it out there so that they can get rid of some of their stock or something. But, speaking of Nintendo, I am going to be, I'm going to try and get video of this. I'm not sure how well all of this is going to work out, but I am going to be at Best Buy getting my hands on a Super Nintendo Classic come Friday morning. It's coming September 29th. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be camping out in front of that fucking Best Buy, and I'm going to be taking care of business. I'm going to get my hands on one of those, and if I can't, I'm going to get some goddamn answers from these people saying, why the hell can't I get my hands on this? But anyway, so whatever. The reviews have actually come out for people that have gotten pre-units of the Super Nintendo Mini or SNES Classic, whatever you want to call it, depending on what part of the world you're in. And the reviews are just saying, wow, this is incredible. Like, this is magic in a box. It's just so cool. And the reviews for Star Fox 2, the final version, which is what you get with the SNES Mini or with the SNES Classic, the reviews have come out and have been incredibly favorable, saying it's awesome to be able to play this game in its final form. I will say quickly that it is a little bit like, I was wondering, because for years you've been able to play the ROM, which is just a little digital file that you can download and put into any kind of any emulator. In fact, interestingly enough, the SNES Classic is just running Linux, and it's running custom Nintendo emulation software. That's all that's going on there. So at the end of the day, the SNES Mini might be one of the most popular Linux boxes ever sold. but anyway, it was a debate as to, well, wait, we've been playing Star Fox 2 or Lylat Wars 2, depending, again, what part of the world you're in. We've been playing that forever. So what's the big deal here? Well, the big deal was that the game was never really completed. And now it is completed. And one of the major differences that I have learned about is that the Star Fox 2 available on the SNES Classic doesn't have the auto-targeting feature, or auto-lock. It doesn't have like this target lock feature, and which makes the game apparently a little bit harder. Which I've heard in reviews that normal mode, you can blow through that inside of 45 minutes. When you put it on hard mode, then boy, you really miss that target lock. But as to where the ROM version that most people have had for, over a decade now, you were able to do some kind of target lock feature. So there's some differences at least. Those are the major ones that I've heard about. Of course, somebody's just going to get their hand on a SNES Classic and they will rip the ROM of the finalized version of the ROM that, of Star Fox 2 that's on the SNES Classic, and then you'll be able to play that in every emulator. So yeah, sure, you still don't have to get a SNES Classic if you don't want to, and you can just play Star Fox 2 in the emulator or something. But me personally, ever since I got a TV which, oh boy, I could do reviews on. I'll talk more about this during tomorrow. I'll be releasing the Star Trek update for September 2017. And I will be doing a bit of a review on CBS, a little one on CBS All Access, and how I feel about that. But bottom line being, anyway, since I've had a more modern TV, that does a pretty good job of still interfacing with the computer and everything, it is really handy when you have multiple HDMI ports and all this stuff, to not have to boot up an emulator and configure the Xbox controllers and all that. You're paying for convenience. When you lay down the $80 for a SNES Classic or $60 for an NES Classic, you really are. That's what you're doing. You're paying for the convenience of, okay, everything's all set, ready to go. Boom, I have save files. These controllers are automatically configured, and I can just hit HDMI 2 on my remote, and away I go, and I'm playing some good old fashioned Nintendo goodness. I think that's worth the price. I don't think it's stupid. I think that's definitely worth it. But we're going to see just how well Nintendo does as far as stock. I think I did mention in a previous Sovereign Tech Prime episode, they are also going to re-release, which I said that they would do. I had an insider actually tell me this, like almost a year ago now, that they would be coming out with, they would be re-releasing the NES Classic, and that's exactly what's happening. That should be out in 2018 though. So anyway, let's actually, none of that had anything to do with the question being asked, but let's get into this week's Q&A, because we got a lot of questions to get to. So starting off, actually, a couple of these questions are actually kind of expansions or corrections on statements made or questions asked. In particularly, one of them is in response to last week's live Patreon Q&A, which was a very fun time and a lot of people really enjoyed. But also the first thing here is a response to an oddity that I had in episode 244 of Sovereign Tech. Real quick, before I talk about the oddity, people have asked, it's been really great. I've seen on social media where people are asking, well, where did he talk about it in this episode and everything? There's a popular trend in podcasting today to not do episode numbers. I think this is insane. Why wouldn't you have? I mean, I get the arguments for against it, or that are against it, as in, if you have episode numbers and if your episode number is really high, people will be intimidated to listen to your show because they think that there's a lot of catching up to do. Now, admittedly, with Sovereign Tech, it's, we've been building on top of subjects, topics, principles, ideas for, about 6 years. And it's helpful to listen. I mean, if one wanted to take the time, it is helpful to listen to every episode of Sovereign Tech. Sure, it'll bring a lot of light to things that I have to only mention very quickly. There's a reason that I always, like to make the comment, well, as I've said in Sovereign Tech, years ago, because I want people to know, hey, this has been talked about. Hey, you can go check it out for yourself and everything. And I think there's a real benefit to that. But you're only, there's another bit of logic that you're only as good as your last show. And I think in that case, you want to give as much as you can, at least a quick overview of whatever, ideological or technological point or something that you're trying to make. So I don't think episode numbers should be that intimidating. If anything, it should be seen as like a mark of, hey, this shit's not a flash in the pan. This has been around. And I mean, I would look for that. If something has a high episode count, good for them, because especially with podcasts, the average podcast goes, maybe 5-6 episodes before everybody quits. And whatever, that's fine. But, that's, I think episode number counts are a really, really a handy thing. So, but I've noticed people that what they'll do is that when someone asks a question about Sovereign Tech, they will just give out the episode number. And that makes it very quick, especially on something like Twitter. Now, granted, and I'll be talking about this in the upcoming Sovereign Tech Prime episode, Twitter is now talking about upgrading to a 280 character limit. Well, I'll save my thoughts, about that, but maybe that'll help not make it so crazy to where, you don't just have to say an episode number if you don't want to. But yeah, sharing, mentioning episode numbers and everything, I mean, it just makes everything so easy and so quick. I love episode numbers. So anyway, they're not going anywhere. So, but in episode 244, I did talk about, I mean, that was just like that was a bullet train of an episode. I mean, I just kept talking, but subject after subject after subject, story after story. And we talked about Atlantis and Octopolis in that episode, where it is these seeming cities as in a social gathering, more or less, and to some degree a creation of structures, that being, an octopus's den. And I was like, wait a minute. The article that I was reading from was saying the plural form of octopus. It was saying it as octopuses. And I was like, oh, that doesn't sound right. I thought it was octopi, and then somebody, actually a great listener, had brought to my attention that the correct plural form of octopus is not octopuses or octopi. It's octopedes. And I was like, wow, okay, well, there it is. But, and I looked a little bit into it, and there's nothing wrong with octopuses. There's nothing wrong with octopi. Just they have like no actual basis. Like they don't have any like actual, scientific basis or etymological basis, I guess you would say, for language. They're not inherently proper forms etymologically, you see, or linguistically. So, wow, that's interesting. Octopedes. Who knew? I'd never heard that before. Never, ever, ever heard that term before. And I've hung out in some science circles in my day. And I totally believe it. And I watched the video that explained the argument of why it's octopedes. And I get it. And I agree. And I will use that from now on. I love learning new terms and proper ways of saying things. Just like I made the correction for most people that, look, it's Neanderthal, not Neanderthal. Generally I don't care how people mispronounce things. I mispronounce things on purpose all the time. I love saying banal instead of banal. I love saying cachette instead of cachet. I think cachet is like just one of the worst fucking words. I don't know. It just sounds like it's ear grating in its sound, and I can't stand it. So I'm all about that. But like, this is a case where it's not pronunciation. It's like form, but as far as octopedes go, but with Neanderthal, I just kind of like being an ass because it's so widely mispronounced when it's well documented of how it should be said. It's just one of those fun things. But anyway, yeah, fun things for me. Just like, well, here's another one: Jekyll and Hyde. It's not Jekyll, it's Jekyll. It's pronounced Jekyll. Like that's how it is. This isn't tomato. All right. It's fucking pronounced Jekyll. Get the guy's name correct. All right. But yeah. So, I mean, they're just, when it's something that's so widely misstated, and that it's not a case of tomato where people generally accept that there's different pronunciations, I just have fun being an ass about it. That's really what that comes down to. Anyway, octopedes, who knew? So, all right, let's get into some of the deeper questions here. Well, this isn't that deep of a question, but it's good I like it when these kinds of questions come in, because it gives me the opportunity to, it really gives me the opportunity to kind of redress whatever is, or readdress. Maybe redress isn't the right word, because redress would be to like correct. Readdress would be the correct term, right? But anyway, it gives me the opportunity to cover, tech topics and recommendations and things like this that do change, sometimes by the day, certainly by the year, and generally at least every 6 months. But I mean, the tech world is shifting all the time. I mean, tomorrow you could find out that CCleaner is actually malicious software. And I mean, that's not an exactly accurate statement, but we'll talk more about that on Cybertech Prime as well. I didn't get to the CCleaner thing on Saturday, but it's a good thing, because there's been a lot of new, this is why you sit on shit. You understand? This is why you take the time, because, in fact, with the Equifax, with the Equifax crack, whatever. Okay. Exploit. I mean, what it's morphing into now. People are saying China was behind the Equifax leak. I guess, data leak might be the best term for it. But with Equifax, yeah, I mean, now we're finding out that really the bulk of the quote unquote solutions that at least Equifax and even a lot of security researchers were recommending, that if you acted that it was just as dangerous for you to act right away as it was to if your your data, your consumer data was actually and identity data was actually leaked, was part of the leak. Like, it's almost dangerous. Point being, it can be dangerous sometimes to react fast to some of this stuff. It's good to wait and collect all of the information to kind of sit on it and see what's gonna come up for you. Because again, you might take action fast and then you find out, oh shit, that was the wrong action to do. It's good to sit on this stuff. That's why I don't ever want, I say this all the time, I don't ever want Sovereign Tech to really be that much of a current event show. Because if you're just constantly reacting to the next thing and you're not taking the time to really find out the reality around a situation or an exploit or something like that, you could run into a whole lot more trouble than the exploit itself. So that's why I really I really like to do that. And CCleaner, come to find out, there's been a lot of, now they're even blaming CCleaner on China. Granted, China and Russia, those are both great boogeymen. I say that facetiously as far as being great. I mean no offense to either of them, but the governments, the respective governments of those countries, are just always they're the whipping boy, the boogeyman of any problem, any major problem that happens in the United States. It's really fucking annoying and ridiculous, but it is what it is. Anyway, so what I get to readdress in this episode, or in this Q&A, is someone asked me, and I'll just boil it down. Someone was asking, is Microsoft Edge ready for like full-time usage? Because I've talked about and sung a couple of praises of what Microsoft Edge has been, has put in and what it's done so far. I like the philosophy behind Microsoft Edge and a lot of the things that are particularly being implemented on the enterprise side of Microsoft Edge, are some of the best practices you can do as far as web browsing. They're looking to sandbox the web browser entirely. Okay, good move. There's a lot of other little things that they have going on with it that I agree with. It has won contests, for being the most secure browser. Granted, part of the reason it's the most secure is that it's not a hot target yet, or maybe ever. But regardless, it wins those contests. I agree with Microsoft actually going pretty much with all new code, like finally dumping the Trident engine and just rocking out all new code for their web browser. And, starting especially with all of the latest advances in cryptography and encoding and all that. Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, rock out some new software. And when you have a company, there's a danger when you are going forward with new code. When something has like a new code base to it, that, well, this hasn't been time tested. Now, the thing is that that's usually a danger when you're talking about, say like a new company that is, looking to make their mark on some kind of new software that they developed. Then it's a very real concern. When it's something like Microsoft, who's probably been developing this for years and has been testing it internally. And when you're at a company of that size, the rules are a little bit different. It's like when Microsoft, look, I'm not saying trust Microsoft. I'd never say that. Okay. What I'm saying is that it has gone through a much different, more rigorous process of testing than, some new code base just being released by some penny ante company. No offense to the little company. So, it's different. So I agree a lot with a lot of the philosophy anyway of what Microsoft has been doing with Microsoft Edge. And that said, it has over, the couple of years that we've been dealing with Windows 10, which is what Edge is exclusively available on, it has gotten significantly better. It was not, in fact, it's almost a little disturbing. Not that I think that there were security flaws necessarily, but there were web compatibility flaws with the very first outing of Microsoft Edge when Windows 10 first came out. And it's almost embarrassing just how not ready the Microsoft Edge web browser was at that time, a couple of years ago. It's gotten a lot better. Now it has, it didn't even have extensions at the time, and it was supposed to have a Chrome app extensibility layer, which is something that Firefox is doing as well, where pretty much it has a layer that can run any Chrome extension, kind of natively. I don't think that ever really came to fruition. I mean, it's easy to like adjust. Apparently it is. And maybe this is all they ever meant, even though it sounded like really you were going to be able to go to the Chrome web store and you were going to be able to install any extension or app that was there. That's the way it felt like they were billing it, but that's not what has happened. And nobody's really talking about it anymore. So I'm guessing what they're really just doing is that they have such a slightly different a set of code that if you just change a couple of things, you can very quickly convert or adjust any Chrome extension to work with Microsoft Edge. That must be what's really going on. I mean, I kind of like that Microsoft seems to be very particular in what extensions they're allowing to work on Microsoft Edge, which is probably, I mean, maybe this is a whole new philosophy on their part, to where they're saying, well, we're doing really well with winning a lot of these contests. Not that they've won them all. Okay. But we're doing really well winning these contests. Let's be really particular with what extensions we're allowing. And then maybe we can keep winning these contests, because extensions is when, Chrome is a very secure web browser. Okay. I'm not saying it's private, but it's very secure. And where security flaws usually crop up is when, you start installing, and where actually a lot of RAM issues also come up and everything, is when you start installing, 20 million fucking extensions and apps onto Chrome. So maybe Microsoft's being really intentional with this. I don't know. I mean, they don't talk about it much. It's just there is a degree of fanfare when suddenly, there's a new extension available for Microsoft Edge. And a lot of the big ones are there. I mean, you have the Reddit enhancement suite. You have actually uBlock Origin, my favorite ad blocker, is available for it now. There's quite a few, that cover a lot of ground. That are available for it. The one that I wish was there, Stylish. I don't think they've made Stylish for Edge yet, which is what kind of repaints the web, recolors the web for you, as it were. Even though now Twitter has a dark mode, so I don't need to really worry about that searing white. But I still like to recolorize Facebook to where it's all dark and everything, along with Wikipedia and some others. But anyway, so bottom line, the question: Microsoft Edge, is it ready for prime time? I still don't think it's there. And I know they keep adding in features, and they're really making it like now it's a PDF reader, it's an EPUB reader, it can do all these different things. I still don't exactly think it's there. There are some things, though, that I think it actually handles better. Some really, really modern like content handling that I think it does a better job of just about any other web browser. For example, I am a huge fan of Stephanie and I, the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy. We're both huge fans of American Ninja Warrior. That honestly, like, I watch that show. I'll just, I don't mean this to sound creepy, but I'm just saying, like, really, and Stephanie feels the same way. Like, I get turned on. Like, it is just that level of athleticism and all that is so sexy. Oh, is it sexy? I mean, and the ladies competing, I mean, they just phenomenal. I love them. It's so cool. Anyway, we will watch, because we don't have traditional cable, we will watch American Ninja Warrior on the website, because you can watch it. There's ads and whatever. You used to be able to ad block them. You can't do that anymore, at least not right now. But anyway, you watch it on the website, and that's what we do. And most of the, like, on the other web browsers, there were just tons and tons of buffering problems and latency issues, everything. But when I play streaming video like that in Microsoft Edge, it's stunning, and it's flawless. Like, it just fucking works. Even, with a few extensions, all that. I mean, it just works. So kudos to Edge for that. It's definitely doing a great job of handling a lot of the modern content. May not be doing the best job of backwards compatibility, but then that's kind of been a part of Edge's philosophy anyway, right? Which is why it has IE, an IE kind of emulator, an Internet Explorer emulator sort of built into it. But I mean, it's actually, emulator might not even be the right term, because it's more or less it's like a backwards compatibility engine. I don't know that would exactly qualify as an emulator, because really it's IE's code. So yeah, but Edge, yeah, it's just, there's some things that still work kind of odd on it, that don't make a lot of sense. Here's another one, Namecheap. Namecheap is my main web host that I use. For some reason on Chrome, and maybe it's an extension that I'm running in Chrome or something, I don't know. But for some reason in Chrome, I can't get through the checkout process with Namecheap. I go and do it though on. In fact, I had the same problem with Firefox. I go and do it on Edge, and it works. It's weird, and I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that. Maybe I have some unique setup that's causing that, but I haven't bothered to take the time to figure that out, because it's not like I'm going through the checkout process on Namecheap all the time. So, but yeah, Edge is kind of there. I mean, the best web browser running right now, like going overall, is probably Opera. Opera's got some really cool features that they're baking in. Like they have the messengers built in and all that. Now, look, if you're open source only, well, fuck, of course you're using Firefox, okay? And Firefox is, this question is we're going to go over this question again of what's the best web browser when like Firefox 57 and the later version, by the end of the year. Like I've said many times, and we've been covering it on Sovereign Tech, Firefox is going to be a completely different web browser by the end of the year. Like completely. It's not going to have the Gecko engine. Everything's going to be running, Project Quantum, and they're going to have the Chrome compatibility layer for extensions and all that. It's going to be a completely different web browser. So we're going to have to cover this question again. But if you're all about open source on desktop and all that, then yeah, of course you're running Firefox. Best web browser on Android? Well, that's Firefox. Like that's not even a question. Even though, you have to keep Chrome around because parts of Android require Chrome to be used. But yeah, as far as on the desktop, I think Opera is really like taking the cake as far as being full featured and having, really good compatibility. Like one of the problems with Edge is that you can't run Google Hangouts. Fuck Google Hangouts, right? But when you sometimes for businesses or whatever else, guess what? You got to use it. I hate it too. But, some of my clients and things that I do, I have to use it. And so Edge, I can't just run Edge. I have to have, another web browser of some kind. But Opera does a phenomenal job of running Hangouts. So, yeah, I would say Opera right now is probably the king. Vivaldi's very nice in what it does. It's not really taking any kind of serious market share. Chrome should be really at the bottom of everybody's list right now, though. In my opinion, especially with just how compatible everything that Opera does. There's some, Google is certainly favoring a lot of its features into Chrome, but I think they're starting to backpedal on that too a bit. So anyway, yeah, I think the best browser going right now is probably Opera. So that's really, I think, what the question was generally asking. But no, I don't think Edge is ready for prime time. The Hangouts problem alone is frankly a problem. Because that's a majorly used service, as far as that goes, which I get it. Microsoft has Mixer, which is their own kind of like game streaming and live streaming service that they run. And maybe that's why they're not worried about Hangouts, is because they just wanted to, they want everybody to jump on Mixer. I don't know if that's some kind of game that they're playing, but whatever, there it is. So, all right. Let's get into some other questions. This one has to do with, oh boy. So a little update on what has, I spent probably like an hour in episode 244. I was talking about how I was banned from Facebook for 24 hours because of a picture that I had shared, or not a picture, a piece of art, a picture of a piece of art that I shared. Well, what happened to me actually last night, and I am recording this on Wednesday. I'm recording this on Wednesday, September 27th, 2017. What happened to me on Tuesday, on the 26th, was I tried uploading a picture. So I do these inspirational art posts where I share generally it's some kind of sexy art. It doesn't have to be sexy, but usually it is, because that's the kind of shit I want to share. You heard me talk all about this in episode 244, so I'm not going to, go over that again. But on Wednesdays, it's comic book release day. And so I do Comic Book Wednesday as far as, inspirational art. So I'll share something from comic books. And I was sharing a piece of art that was Jean Grey and Rogue from the X-Men, fully clothed. They're in their regular outfits. It's art. It's drawn. It's animated, or not animated, but you get what I mean. It's drawn. It's not cosplayers or anything, but it's two women and they're kissing. It's Rogue and Jean Grey kissing. The funny thing is that actually a patron was able to post, like I commented about it and said, Well, all right. Sorry, I didn't say what happened here. Okay. I tried to like schedule this because in groups now, in Facebook groups, you can schedule posts. So I usually do like the inspirational art posts sometimes days in advance or at least the day before. And I'll schedule it to release at like 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. the next morning before, honestly, usually I'm even awake. And so I go to do this and this error just comes up on Facebook saying, this is breaking our community standards. This is not, blah, 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 blah. Which is pretty much the exact problem I ran into where my account got blocked for 24 hours last time. Now, they didn't block my account. They just said, okay, you don't get to post this. This is not all right. It was two fully clothed, drawn women, characters that are as popular as any comic book characters could be, kissing. And that broke Facebook's community standard. That was against Facebook's community standards. What the goddamn fuck? Bull, I'll say it again, bull fucking shit that like, oh yeah, those liberals, they're taking over, they're trying to destroy society with all their sexuality and all that stuff. Well, no, on the platform that everybody communicates now, the world's town hall, that being Facebook, I can't share two women kissing. Fuck your fucking arguments against liberals. Fuck it. It's fucking conservative bullshit. Man, I was livid. You think I know? Hey, look, most people think that I just walk around constantly livid all the time. That may not be too far from the truth. No, I'm kidding. I'm actually a very happy person. Okay, but this is just so stupid. Like what the fuck? Like that could have. I don't think that was actually out of an issue of X-Men, but it could have just as easily been out of an issue of X-Men. I mean, since the 90s, there has been kissing at least since the 90s. I'm sure even well before, but there had been sexy moments and kissing inside of X-Men comics. I remember particularly when Psylocke was making out, underneath, underneath the, the Blackbird there, whatever. When she was making out with Cyclops, and she's wearing like this very skimpy dress and everything, and it's like, this is part of the comic books and what? So it's good enough for comic book shelves and for kids to buy, but it's not good enough for fucking Facebook. That fucking company. You goddamn Android, Zuck. Oh, man. Anyway, so I couldn't post it. I kept trying, and it says, here, you can forward it for review to the community standards. And it kept denying it. The funny thing is that so I posted about this. I said, look, I'm done. I'm done sharing this fucking art. I'm so done with this. Fuck you, Facebook. Fuck it. And underneath, a patron actually shared the same exact picture that I was trying to share, but he was able to share it in the thread. I wasn't able to share it myself in the group. And so I don't know what the deal is here because they don't really explain it. They give you a very brief explanation of what's wrong with everything. And so maybe my account's being watched now for this kind of content or something. And look, like we talked about in episode 244, this is so bad. It's not just art. If you say something that's just too sexy, it's just too hot, Facebook will take it down. It's not just pictures anymore. Now it's what you say that'll get taken down and your account will get blocked. Fuck this shit. Fuck it. Yeah, people should really be up in fucking arms about it, especially when, where am I sharing this? In a secret goddamn group. Man. Theoretically, it's impossible for the outside world to see anything of the sort. It's so depressing. And all the reacts on my post, sad reacts, angry reacts, because everybody's like, oh shit, because people loved it. It was great. They loved, I had so many people say, oh man, I just came home and I saw this sexy ass art and I had a rough day at work, but God damn it, that made my day. You just made my day, baby. And that's why I love doing it. Because a lot of people, look, honestly, I'm not talking about everybody, but a lot of people, and I understand why, they don't have either, and I don't necessarily mean this as an insult, okay, but they don't have the guts or the temerity or, they have people watching their account, family members or something, to where they feel they can safely share this kind of shit. Well, me, I don't care. You know, this is what I'm into. I am all about, hell, I say it in the intro, or it says it in the intro of every episode of Sovereign Tech. Okay. I am here to corrupt the world. All right. I will corrupt all morality, all of Western civilization. I am trying to corrupt it. All right. You know, by spreading coolness, sexiness, all of that, and maybe a little principled truth here and there, a little egoism. Okay. But fucking A, this is how bad it is. This is what happens. What you see what I'm saying? This is these fucking social mores when you have all of these. Oh, all right, I'm not going to. I have other things I want to talk about, but bottom line is that look, I'm not depressed, but I am disheartened. Okay, and I really I don't have a desire right now to really engage with Facebook at all. I am so pissed off about this. And so during episode 244, I had quite a few people get in touch with me, or after episode 244, about what are solutions to create a Sovereign Tech Facebook group where it can genuinely be uncensored. Okay, where I can share the sexy shit. Look, it's important to me. And I've gotten the response from people of just how much it genuinely improves their lives for them to just see one little piece of sexy art in their day. So it's worth it. This isn't something stupid. So anyway, a lot of people, I had recommended the Line Messenger. A lot of people jumped on board with saying, oh yeah, I would, I just created a Line account. I'm ready to go. If you want to go on there, we'll go on Line Messenger and we'll do this. So I'm thinking about that. Another recommendation came in from a patron. I'll read it here. Listening to the most recent episode where you're talking about alternatives to Facebook for a Sovereign Tech community, and I'm sure you're aware of it, but I think Reddit would be a good alternative. I think Reddit's layout is much better than Facebook's for in-depth conversations, and it already has a huge user base. Also, pretty much the only thing you can get banned from Reddit for is advocating violence, which I know you wouldn't do. And thank you. Yes, I'd never advocate for violence. Reddit. So why I didn't mention Reddit during episode 244 was because I usually I'm fully aware of Reddit. I actually have to use it for some clients, but I don't think about it because I really feel Reddit is a fucking cesspool. I know that the Bitcoin community on there and cryptocurrencies and all, I know that a lot of people get a lot of genuine, really great stuff out of it and find it very helpful and everything. And I'm so glad for that. And I'm not saying I don't want Reddit to not exist. I'm not saying I don't want it to exist or something. But that's why it didn't come to mind. But after this person mentioned it to me, I'm like, yeah, that is pretty huge. Reddit is kind of a big deal. And that could be very interesting. The only concern I have, and this is where I don't know much about Reddit, is if I can make closed off Reddits, because I think a lot of people felt a little more comforted in that not everybody can see what they were saying in the Sovereign Tech secret Facebook group, which is why I originally made it secret, was so that, people could feel comfortable sharing, some of the deeper, darker things going on for them. And people really said, that it really meant a lot to them that they could do that. And they really enjoyed it. So I don't know, I mean, this is something that I'm really going to take time to think about, because I spent a lot of time trying to make this Facebook group something very special. I think it worked. I think people did find it special, but I am not interested in dealing with Facebook, just scrutinizing every little fucking post that I make, and potentially blocking my Facebook account. Even though, like I said, that would be the greatest thing to ever happen to me. I have some clients where I have to manage some pages for them. I mean, I can just make another account and they can just, make that account, which could have nothing to do with me. It could just be a bullshit name, but that they could give access to. So I'm not so worried about that. That's certainly something, but right now that'd be a lot of hassle and it's time I don't have. And I'm just so sick of this. And it's just so funny because, it's not funny. It's sad that this is the stuff that I was saying would happen. That eventually, look, this technology is going to strangle you socially. It's not going to empower you. It's going to strangle you. And I made it very clear. I said, conservatives are still running the show. Yes, they are. This conservative morality and all this stuff is still affecting everybody. It's widespread. It's not like, even if you go into your dark corner of your secret Facebook group where no one else can see unless you allow them in, unless they friend you first, nobody can do it. And you still, no, sorry. In this conservative fucking planet, you don't get to share the sexy shit, goddammit. Not on Facebook. And on a lot of other platforms, it's not, it's not entirely possible either. There's Tumblr, there's Twitter, but yeah, I get it. Look, the companies can do what they want. I understand that, but let's just be clear here that, what attitude is this putting on display? It's not liberalism, it's conservatism. So anyway, I'll think about Reddit. I'm thinking about Reddit, and I am genuinely, considering Line. Both of those are kind of, actually, both of those are really at the top of what to do. The thing is like, the beauty, like, I got asked by a lot of people to make a Facebook group because they're there, and I don't know that everybody wants to move. I don't know that that's gonna be a thing. So, and there's certain people that I want, to really be in the group that I don't think that they would, I don't know that they would take the time to make another account. There's people, that are important to me that I want to be able to interact with, that I don't, again, I don't know that they would be willing to really like start another account, or that they would even actively be somewhere else. So that's disappointing too. All right. So another person asked me, no more Bitmessage. So Bitmessage is there was a new development team that took over like a year and a half ago or so. But Bitmessage was this really interesting idea where you use the blockchain blockchain technology effectively to just send messages. And I used Bitmessage and espoused Bitmessage for a while. All these messages, everything would be automatically encrypted. You could kind of do groups on there, and you could kind of do newsletters and everything. But yeah, I stopped supporting Bitmessage some time ago. I got a little excited again when there was a new development team that seemed to be taking things seriously, but yeah, it's just, again, I always talk about account minimalism, right? Having as few accounts, or software minimalism, using as little software as possible, having as few accounts as possible. And Bitmessage was just something that there wasn't the level of engagement that, in my opinion, made it worthwhile to continue using. And, it's not something that was ever like, let's face it. Bitmessage done right was not going to appear on mobile phones. Just wasn't. Okay. And if it's not going to be there, people aren't going to, it's just never really going to have that engagement. Not that, look, I am so ready, and I've been for years, I am so ready to toss my fucking smartphone right out the goddamn door, like any day, I am ready to do that. It's not like I'm saying, oh, well, if they're not using mobile phone or it's not me saying that, oh, I'll only support something if it supports mobile. No, I'm not really saying that. I fucking hate mobile. Okay. What I'm saying is that, realistically, for me to develop a community of some kind, you can't exactly lead a horse to water, right? You got to bring the water to them in a way. So, yeah. So that's the deal. That's the deal with Bitmessage, and that's why it hasn't been in the show notes for a while. So anyway, let's get into a little bit of a philosophical question here. Quick. All right, look, folks, the one account that you can pretty much always count on me having, as long as the company continue to exist, I'll always have a Twitter account, and of course there will always be email, which is again why I say almost the beginning of every show for a while now, which is why I do the Sovereign Tech newsletter, so that I can interact with you in a way that nobody can really take away. Not realistically. Not pragmatically, they couldn't take it away from you. So, but I'll always have a Twitter account. It's a great place to follow me. It's where I have most of my followers. I have some odd over 10,000 followers on Twitter. So, yeah, you can always count on me there. If you're ever wondering, it's like, well, where is he going to be now? Well, there's one of the places. Okay, so here's a great question. Let's see. The world without internet. That's what I titled it. It's a short question because it came off of Twitter, actually. How do you think your beliefs would be shaped or have evolved if the internet did not exist? So I guess there's kind of two ways that this could go. Is that like what if we had it for a while and then it went away, or if the internet never existed. So there's no real, I mean, I guess I'll try and maybe answer both of them, but a lot of caveats here. I don't think that, first off, I don't think that there would ever be a world where some kind of network didn't exist. Like, okay, if the internet itself never existed, there would still be BBSs, right? Bulletin board systems that just use the old fashioned phone line and everything. That would have still been a thing. Like I think it's nearly impossible for there not to be, something, that allows for communication between computers. I mean, local area networks would be a thing. BBSs are really just like, local area networks on a couple extra testosterone boosters, effectively. And so I can't exactly imagine. I can imagine a world where it's just BBSs. I can't really imagine a world where like there's no interconnectivity between computers. So, but I guess if I were to say what would my life, I'll try and answer this in three ways. So what would my life, how would my beliefs be shaped? What would I be thinking if there was never an internet? Honestly, I don't know how different things would be. I really don't. And the reason I say that is that most of the conclusions that the really, really like hard beliefs, and I guess principles that I've had for a while, outside of like anarchism, and understand, I didn't get brought to anarchism because of the internet. I got brought to anarchism because of like TV shows and stuff like that. So a world without TV would be a whole other thing. But I mean, Angela Keaton made me an anarchist. Okay. And I saw her on Fox Business. I saw her on TV on an incredibly mainstream network. So I get the sense that I still would have become an anarchist. I mean, a lot of the things that now, okay, would I have maybe heard of, Max Stirner without the internet? It might have taken me a little bit longer, but this is my point, is that, and I've talked about this before, actually, like a great example. Okay. So the show Ancient Aliens, go ahead and laugh, get it out. That's fine. Okay. I don't believe that aliens have ever been to Earth, which that's another principle that I held before the internet was a thing. Okay. There is an episode in season 2 of Ancient Aliens that talks all about like the Nazis and aliens, or the Nazis and UFOs and all this different stuff. It's one of the best 45 minutes of documentary. And at the time, Ancient Aliens was trying to take itself a lot more seriously and trying to actually back up what it was claiming. Now they just kind of say whatever and it just goes out there. Again, folks, I don't think aliens have ever been to Earth, but in that, I was like, wow. I mean, it was just incredible, the amount of information that they disseminated. And a lot of it is very legit information. Okay. In this episode from season 2 of Ancient Aliens about Nazis. And again, this came out like 12 years ago. Okay. But at the time I was actually mad about it. I was like, oh, what the fuck? Well, it wasn't 12 years ago, but it was like a decade ago, I guess. But I was actually mad about it because I was like, I knew all this, but I had to go to the library. I had to go through a bunch of books. I had to go to Barnes and Noble. I had to buy all these books to be able to figure all this out. I had to put in all the time reading all this shit to figure all this stuff out. And that's the thing, is that, again, for me personally, like a lot of my beliefs, like the idea that aliens never came to Earth, okay, that's from a book from 2001 called Rare Earth. I found that book. I found out about that at like a convention. Okay. It had nothing to do, like I didn't find out that kind of information on the internet. Granted, I guess maybe I wouldn't be so into cybersecurity, and, like there wouldn't have been so much of the cypherpunk community and all that without the internet. So that might have made things different, I guess. But bottom line being is that a lot of the scientific conclusions and a lot of the, I guess, philosophical, ideological conclusions that I've come to had nothing to do with the internet whatsoever. I actually don't spend most of my time, other than, maybe I'll read some stuff on C4SS. I don't spend most of my time like reading about anarchism necessarily. I mean, I do look up stories that are relevant to it in the news and what's coming on, but I don't like spend a whole ton of my time reading about, anarchy online. I don't. I have physical books for a lot of that, or I have, ebooks and whatever. And if I didn't have the ebooks, look, I just would have bought them. you know. And, yeah, so I don't know just how different everything would be for me without the internet, because again, you know, I'm a Zennial, right? Which means I'm an older millennial. I'm a Zennial. And so I had a huge chunk of my life where the internet wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, I make this claim all the time, and I think that it can be backed up. And that is, the internet didn't become what we know of it today. It didn't become in as heavy usage as we know it today until 2003. So, you know, but I was, at that time, I would have been like 21, 22. And, you know, I was already a pretty knowledgeable fellow by that point. That wasn't with, you know, there was no Wikipedia. There was none of, like, the internet was really not this information resource at that time. You didn't really have Google. I mean, like, so many of these things wouldn't have been there. So I came to so many of these long held conclusions of my own, you know, without the internet. So that's kind of the, you know, the hard part with that. As far as saying, would I be any different? Yeah, I don't think I'd necessarily be that different. I guess one of the things that maybe wouldn't have happened, I mean, you know, Stephanie talks about how, like, she encountered atheism and libertarianism and all this stuff thanks to the internet. And so without the internet, maybe, who knows? I mean, she might still be like a Wiccan or something. I mean, I wouldn't dare speak for her. Admittedly, like, one of the final nails in the coffin for me becoming an atheist as a teenager did come off of the internet, and it was because of something like a little essay that I read by Harlan Ellison. And, you know, like, I eventually got to hang out with Harlan and all that, and I originally encountered Harlan on TV, and then I would read his books, and then I'd finally get to, you know, actually, like, meet him and hang with him at conventions and everything. So I think that would have happened eventually anyway, you know, like, I would have heard those more extreme views of his, you know, sooner or later. Yeah. And I mean, and as to today, like, what would I be like without the internet today? I'd probably be a lot happier. I mean, I know it's helping out so many people. I get that. The internet is so empowering in so many ways. I understand. Maybe I don't mean the internet. I want to imagine a world without fucking social media. And then I think I'd be a lot happier. You know how I love to communicate with people? There's certain people that'll, like, signal me. You know, there's people I consider very close that I'll use a messaging app with. And those are the communications that I really like are very deeply meaningful to me. And look, I mean, the interactions I have with some of my friends that are, you know, all around the world, you know, on Facebook and elsewhere, those are meaningful too. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, like, there is something extra special. I don't know, when it's done with some of these less feature rich, shall we say, communication modes or communication venues that we have. So, yeah, so I don't think I would be that different of a person, and I would have encountered Max Stirner's work sooner or later, because I would have been reading, like, larger texts on anarchism, and eventually I would have found out, like, I would have caught, like, just a quick shot of egoism, and I would have been like, oh, wait a minute, there's some truth. And so yeah, so I don't think it'd be that different. As far as, I mean, I could see, yeah, I mean, you know, even with just the phone lines, like, I was still doing multiplayer gaming, so I'd still be just as hardcore of a gamer. I think I don't know that it would be that different, but I can think of a lot of people where I think their world would be very different because they experienced a lot of, I mean, because without YouTube, they would have never encountered a lot of these ideas, you know, and I totally admit to that. So we would have a lot less, there would be a lot less, shall we say, truth out there if it weren't for the internet. I totally, you know, and there'd be a lot less anarchists, there'd be a lot less libertarians. I think that's absolutely true. But as far as, like, would I be any different? No, I was who I was in many ways before the big bad internet, as it were, before the World Wide Web was the thing. I would be you know, I mean, like, what made me a hedonist? It wasn't, you know, having cybersex on IRC. That allowed me to explore some interesting, you know, aspects of myself and others. But, you know, it was something like that I saw on TV. Now, a world without TV, that is a very interesting question. But, you'll have to ask that one for next time. So anyway, let's move on to another comment here. Actually, this is a comment. This has to do with last week's live Q&A that we did on, of all things, Google Hangouts. And it was comments on, somebody had some comments about the whole 5G thing, which we were talking about. I still haven't looked into this, but a great patron and a great guy, he shared with me this kind of conspiracy podcast where he's talking about that the 5G spectrum, which is going to eventually replace 4G LTE, which is what everybody's using with their mobile phones, that it's some kind of mind control and a whole bunch of other stuff. So anyway, but this person is, I know, a patron here, is does a lot of very technical work, actually works in the theater, and it's and he said, and I'll just read his comments here. I'm basically going to ignore addressing all of the BS tinfoil hat shit. The frequencies they are talking about, of course, Stanley breaking in, referencing the 5G, have been in use for decades. I'll break in again. This is absolutely true. Like the 5G spectrum, when I said that like it's not out there, I meant that like nobody is selling it to you because they're still kind of working out a lot of these deals and laying out the infrastructure for it. The antenna infrastructure effectively. So yeah, the 5G bands and all this, like this airwaves, these airwaves have long been around. So if they were doing mind control, this mind control has been going on for a long time. Anyway, and I don't think they're doing mind control. Thank you. Anyway, it's out there now. It's just experimental. T-Mobile spent something like $8 billion to buy the spectrum. They have been pretty aggressive in testing, actually. They knocked an NBC News show, Mike's and IFBS, offline a month or two back. Also, they hit a Broadway show. Lots of things are currently operating in that spectrum. That's 614 megahertz to the 698 megahertz range. TV broadcasters and almost all of the wireless mics, IFBS, in-ear monitors, and comm systems that are now in use. The UHF band is the best band to operate in due to the propagation characteristics. The size of the wavelengths allow it to pass through most walls and easily wrap around corners. The current cell system is capable of supporting 5G from what I'm being told. The biggest thing holding them up from turning it all on is, number one, some TV broadcasters need to spend millions to move to a new frequency, and number two, they are waiting for 5G phones to hit the pipeline. I suspect that we will be seeing the phones being pushed around Christmas this year. Yeah, I can see phones being sold with like 5G ready, even though they can't, like, in advance of the fact that they really can't, like AT&T and T-Mobile and others, they can't roll out 5G legally until like later 2019, maybe even 2020. But he's right. I mean, and this is the issue why it's not out there. What he's saying is absolutely accurate. It's similar to like in my own house, where if you're on the 2.4 gigahertz, connected to a router to the wireless, and it's the 2.4 gigahertz band, the microwave in the house will knock out your internet because the frequencies conflict with each other. And so right now, the 5G frequencies are absolutely conflicting with a lot of, like wireless mics, a whole slew of things, and networks, whatever else, that's really messing with. And so there's a lot of conversion that has to go on to where 5G can be a thing. And that's why there's like, okay, you can't legally unroll it until this date because that's giving all these other, TV networks and whatever else, it's giving them time to set up. In fact, even this guy said, I've got to spend about $140,000 to update almost all of the wireless stuff in our theater this year. So yeah, so everybody's got to kind of catch up with this. It's really crazy. Why technologies like P-Cell and some others still haven't really hit stride? That's another conversation to be had. But yeah, that's the reality around 5G, and I appreciate them bringing all of that up right on. So okay, we've got a few minutes left. The last few minutes, I want to get to a fun question that was asked, and that is this has to do with the X-Men. So question is, and it's from Twitter, do you have a favorite X-Men comic book writer? If so, who are they and why? Okay, so I'm going to give you, now I love the X-Men, one of my, just a very enjoyable comic series. In the 90s, I'll admit, in the 90s, it was sort of an afterthought for me, but later on, once you get into the aughts, things got interesting. Okay. Things got very interesting, in fact. So, I'm not going to bring up, like, a lot of people want to bring up Jim Lee and some others, that are on board with that throughout the 90s, Age of Apocalypse stuff and all of that. And I get it. I understand why all of that is so popular. And certainly the 92 X-Men cartoon has a big hand in a lot of that stuff being very popular. But like I said, I'm going to give you 3 here. Probably what really got me into X-Men, I didn't really get into X-Men so much until 2001. And if I don't know if the person meant like X-Men directly or just the whole mutant titles in general, because if you mean the mutant titles in general, like I loved Rob Liefeld's work with New Mutants and with X-Force, with X-Force with Cable, the original one, with Cable and Domino and all that. That was some gritty fucking comic books. I mean, like that was really, really serious, badass stuff being done. That you couldn't get anywhere else. In fact, throughout the 90s, I pretty much just followed wherever Rob Liefeld went, I went. When he did the Heroes Reborn titles, like I think he was doing Captain America and some others, and maybe I think he was doing Fantastic Four during that. I followed him, to that, and I was like, oh, this is great. We got Rob Liefeld. Rob Liefeld also did, he started his own, well, he did a couple imprints. He helped start Image, and then he also did Maximum Press. Which Maximum Press did the first sequel comic book, which would become a very popular thing for a lot of minor comic book companies to do. He did the first sequel comic books to the 78 Battlestar Galactica, which is the only real Galactica. That new show was terrible. And it was awesome. Like what he did with Battlestar Galactica in the 90s was just some of the best comics you could read ever. I mean, like it's really, really cool. It's very sexy. He's got the whole package going, Rob started pretty much the whole Deadpool thing. He's, a lot of credit needs to go to him for bringing comic books to a very extreme level. Like in some ways, if somebody said to me, Rob Liefeld created the 90s, I would have very little argument with that fact, because all of those artistry tropes and design tropes that you think of from the 90s, like he embodied a lot of that, certainly the more adult ones anyway, and maybe not so much like all the sprinkles behind everybody, but you know what I mean? He didn't do Saved by the Bell, but anything that was that was extreme and a little more grown up and whatever, he was one of the main guys behind. I mean, him and Jim Lee, owned that decade in a very real sense. So yeah, I love what Rob Liefeld did with X-Force. Just because of just the grittiness of it, the darker tone, and the sexiness, all of that was really, really helpful. I think it's going to be so cool. I think they've said that Domino, they even have the actress down, I believe. Domino will be in Deadpool 2. I can't wait. She was such a cool character. So yeah, a lot of credit to Rob Liefeld and his work on New Mutants. I mean, that's legendary. He took a title that was, a penny ante title, and he just, he took it to the heights. So I got to give a shout out to Rob, because, he's something, even though I know in the real artist community, there are issues with him, and I respect that. Even though he's the guy who, self-taught boy out of SoCal, like I know the deal. But I respect the issues that people have with him, but he definitely changed the industry, in a very real way. Probably like best work. Well, okay, so I'm going to give you 2 more answers on this. So the guy that really got me into X-Men would have been in 2001, and that's when Marvel did kind of not a reboot of the universe, but sort of the title, where they called it New X-Men. This was in 2001. They brought on Grant Morrison to do the writing, and they got a guy a longtime collaborator with Grant Morrison, that being the artist Frank Quietly. And they did a run for about 3 years with X-Men, calling it New X-Men, which is where they took on the U-Men, right? The U-Men was like this cult where they were a corporation / cult, which I guess I repeat myself, where they they steal powers from other mutants, from real mutants, to give everyday people mutant powers. But of course, it doesn't exactly shape up, it doesn't work out as well as they'd hoped. But his whole New X-Men run from 2001 to 2004 was awesome. I mean, Grant Morrison is brilliant and just an very unique and incredible individual. I'm not saying I agree with him 100%, on everything that he does, but I mean, his work on The Invisibles, some of the greatest comic books ever done. I mean, this was a big win for Marvel, and it's even at that point, getting into the aughts, it is rare that you get these, any run that goes longer than, honestly, maybe 6 months to a year. Most creative team runs are very short-lived now. And so for him to do 3 years, it's because he was doing something right. It's because he was making it happen. I like the fact that Grant Morrison, one of the nice things that he did is that, like, I love, kind of speaking of what Rob Liefeld did, how he brought in the sexy, okay, especially with, him and Jim Lee, really both, but how they brought in the sexy into the X-Men. Grant Morrison kept the sexy. In fact, he did great work with the character of Emma Frost, of the White Queen, like really rehabilitating her into a heroic character, giving her, this is when she finally got her diamond powers, which was a new thing for her. I mean, for what he did, for how well he wrote the White Queen and even the Black Queen, Selena, they were, like, that alone is reason enough that he's, did one of my favorite runs. But he kept the sexy, but then he also had, credit to Frank Quietly as well for doing the artistry for him. He also had the ability to bring in, like, he was sort of all inclusive. Like, there was no body shaming. As sexy as the White Queen, as Emma Frost was, you still had other characters. Like, there was the woman that was like she had the bee powers, like the bumblebee powers and everything. And where, she was kind of obese and all this other stuff. And it just worked. And it was very respectful. And it felt like, again, that, you could relate more, and the X-Men felt like outcasts again. It was such a well done run. It's a legendary run in comic books in general. And for the X-Men, I think it's one of their best. Not the best, but that'll be my next pick. But it was a tremendous, like, if you want to get the trade paperbacks of Grant Morrison's entire run with New X-Men, that is a worthy read, and you don't need to really know anything more. Like, he does a great job of also wrapping in a lot of history with the X-Men, to where, you could read that on its own and you don't need to know much else about the X-Men. But I loved, and what he did with the White Queen was just tremendous. I was very, very pleased with that, because she's one of my favorite characters. Her and the Black Queen both are two of my favorite comic book characters, bar none. Now, my favorite X-Men run, actually, is for a comic titled not just X-Force, like what Rob Liefeld was doing, but Uncanny X-Force. And they did sort of I think it's technically Volume 3, or maybe it's Volume 1 of Uncanny. Yeah, I guess it'd be Volume 1 of Uncanny X-Force. I think X-Force, the title alone, was in Volume 3 at the time. But anyway, Uncanny X-Force, you had Rick Remender, just... He just I don't know, maybe he just grew up in the 90s. I don't even know how old Rick Remender is. I never got to meet him. As to where I've met, or at least I've seen Grant Morrison. I've met Rob. He just got it. He seemed to totally understand what made the X-Men work. And he did Uncanny X-Force for 2 years. Again, this is a 2010 to 2012. A 2-year run is fucking unheard of. Okay, actually, I think he might have even gone a bit beyond that. But in that 2-year run, he created what is, in my opinion, in fact, I did like a Marvel top 8 for patrons, and this was in my Marvel top 8 because it was that fucking great. He had the team of Archangel, who Angel became Archangel again. He had Archangel, Deadpool, Eva, and Phantom X, which is just he's an awesome mutant. Psylocke and Wolverine. That was the team. That was that version of X-Force. And it was so hot. I mean, it was white hot. You couldn't. It was so, having Psylocke in it alone makes it sexy, right? But having Deadpool and Wolverine working together, having Phantom X involved, and even, it was brilliant. It was so well done. Everything that they were pulling off with that was fantastic. And anytime they'd have somebody guest in, it was really cool on the line. And it was like a Black Ops group. Like, this is how they were treating this rendition of X-Force. And they had like matching suits where it was like all this black and white instead of, Wolverine having maybe more of the subdued browns or yellow or whatever. Well, Psylocke, I don't think actually wore her her usual very skimpy and very nice ninja outfit was black. Instead of kind of the dark blue that it normally was. This was just a badass title, and they got it, like, in all of them working together, but their egos were still constantly, in conflict. They were constantly arguing with each other on things, and, Phantom X and Psylocke's, romantic relationship. It was the total package of everything you want out of X-Men. And it was funny because, Deadpool's there playing off of Logan. Come on. I mean, you knew it would be hilarious. That was really cool. Everything about it was just, it is one of those, in my opinion, Rick Remender's run with Uncanny X-Force is one of the perfect moments in comic books that are just so rare. You just don't get them enough, especially for 2 fucking years. That's crazy. I mean, that is really, really crazy. I can barely think of a better run, of comics than that. I mean, it easily takes the cake. There might be some runs of Iron Man that might have been that might match it. It was just awesome. So Uncanny X-Force, that first run, Volume 1, from 2010 to 2012 with that original team. Yeah, that's the best X-Men writing. That's some of the best comic book writing ever done. And total credit to Rick Remender for just getting it. I think he was able to encapsulate everything that made not so much the social commentary that the X-Men provides, which Grant Morrison did a great job of highlighting in his new X-Men run, but more of what makes X-Men cool. He just got it. And he brought it all together. The lines are, the one-liners are there. The sexiness is there. Of course, the Psylocke. That's so easy to do when you have Psylocke, unless you drop the ball like in the movie X-Men Apocalypse. What the fuck? But yeah, just awesome. So anyway, there you go. That's there's my favorite writers for X-Men and my favorite runs. And I think we'll wrap this baby up. Got more Patreon content coming out this week. In fact, there might be a little bit of a surprise. We'll see. And, of course, new Sex and Science Hour will be out. And I've got, as usual, a Dynamite Sovereign Tech to get into. Maybe we can get into some of the stories I had lined up for episode 244. But, this time around, I won't be talking for an hour about Facebook. And we'll get into it in episode 245. So I will see you, on the other side.